Welcome back, everyone, to Blue Collar Startup. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Nelson, Five Towers Media, joined by Derek Foster.
Your co-host.
The co-host. Something.
How's it going, Mike?
So I'm good, man. I'm good. We had this little break here, and I honestly, man, I've been so sick all week, and I've
been wanting to ask you how you feeling.
Oh, I'm feeling.
You over the cold?
Yeah, I'm like 90% back to where I'd like to be. It was a rough week, man. I haven't been that sick, I think, since I got COVID back in like 2021 or whenever it was. But it was nasty, man. It was just couldn't get out of bed. So, but I survived.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people are getting sick, and it's elongated. They're exhausted all the time, and it just trails on forever. So I think 80-90% is probably a really good place now.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. Yeah, Monday was awful, man. But I'm glad to be here and glad to be back on and glad to be joined by Paul Lachar, right? That's how you say your last name, Paul?
I answer anything. It's Lachar, but that's pretty close.
Lachar, okay.
It sounds a lot fancier than what it's actually pronounced. So I like that. I might start going with that.
That's amazing. You can always count on me to mess up everybody's names. And Paul, you're with Course Masonry. Real quick, give everybody kind of the rundown about who you are and what you guys do over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Paul. Like you said, I own Course Masonry. So we're primarily a foundation repair and waterproofing company, and we really focus on accurately diagnosing what the root cause of the foundation issue is. You know, there's a lot of these solutions that you can kind of use to resolve multiple issues, but they're really not intended that way. And so when these solutions are used for that, like say interior drains are used to deal with water on the exterior of your foundation wall, there's other issues that come into play that affect the structural integrity of that foundation wall. And so what we do differently is we really try and focus on getting to the root cause and really, doing the repairs that are necessary to maintain the structural integrity of the foundation, as well as addressing that water component.
And so how long have you guys been doing this?
I've been in business and doing masonry work for over 20 years now. Yeah, and so really, you get to a point where it's, you have to kind of specialize in something, whether it's flat work, whether it's, brickwork or, whatever it is. And foundations really were my passion because I found that there's a lot of misinformation out there. In Googling foundation problems is much like, WebMD when you have a headache.
Everybody's foundation has cancer, right?
Yeah. You're terminal and you're on a roller coaster of emotions from that point, It's one of those things that I found that there's such a wide range in perspectives on how to address stuff. And, from a homeowner's perspective, because we only do residential stuff, I really don't have an interest in commercial work and that kind of thing. So when you're dealing with a homeowner who, and a lot of times it's, they've maybe seen that there's been a bit of an issue and they just kind of let it go a little bit. And it's a stressful thing. They don't want to really tackle it. They're thinking, wild things in their head. Their house is falling down and, should we sell it? Should we not sell it? What are we going to do? So you're dealing with a lot of, misinformation, a lot of stress, and a lot of lack of knowledge, just in terms of the working components of your foundation and what might actually be at play. So it leaves a huge market for people to take advantage of people's lack of knowledge. And, there's a lot of situations where YouTube and Google are helpful. And unfortunately, this is just not one of them. So I really, I had a really strong passion for being able to actually help people and provide what they need, not just what I might be able to offer.
Sure. So you're not just selling them something, you're actually getting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, sometimes I'm not the best thing, like I don't do exterior drainage, but, I might have a referral from you if that's what you need, and a lot of the other stuff we do, like, interior drains, we excavate, we repair, we can replace your foundation wall if that's what's needed. Structural bracing, things like that. But, you really want to make sure that the solution is the right fit and addresses the core issue and not just the symptom, which is usually what people are first alerted to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I was just looking at one of our neighbors the other day that's actually just redoing their foundation, like one of their foundation walls. And it's just like, what a project that is, right? Like doing foundation work just seems crazy to me, but
I mean,
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's a pretty common perspective, even within the construction field,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because you're like, you're trenching. You got to make sure you're doing around the foundation. You're not messing up the foundation when you do that. Like,
oh yeah, yeah.
Do you guys have to have like roofers, right? Their insurance is always crazy. Tree guys, is always crazy. Like, do you guys have crazy insurance as well?
Crazy insurance, yeah. I mean, I could probably level your house 4 times before it reaches my insurance limit, So, thankfully, I've never had to use it, but it's there if I ever do, Yeah, knock on wood.
How did you get into all this? Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question. Go ahead. We're on the same page.
It's great. So, I've done all kinds of construction. I've done all kinds of masonry work.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting a job years ago where it was a new homeowner, and they had gotten money off the house because there were some foundation issues. And I, at that point, I was already kind of gearing up and doing some of these other things. And I said, I know I can resolve this for you. And I was able to work with them. And I fell in love with it. Just knowing that you've really resolved the issue, you didn't provide a Band-Aid for somebody, and you've impacted, maybe generations of their family, and they passed the house down and this kind of thing. And so, that was it. Once after the first foundation job, I mean, I was hooked. I was like, this is what I want to do,
Yeah. And how many people do you have working with you these days?
So these days, actually, it's I'm really, and this is one of those things. People are like, "Oh, isn't it hard working with family?" It's right now. It's me and my 3 boys,
Nice.
and it's so great. I really am so thankful for that. And it's even then, it's a process. There were years where I had employees, and the biggest challenge that I had with that was that this is not easy work. And, you can't just be like, oh, I know how to lay block, like I've hired union guys and things like that. And they may be great at laying block, but there's other components at play when you're dealing with foundation work, utilities, you're dealing with high water tables, and it's not a clean, let's set the wall and go.
Right.
And there's a lot to do to protect it after that wall's built. So, and people, they don't have a stake in your business like that, so it's a job for them. And my biggest thing has always been, this can't be just a job. There's a million other things that you can do if you just want a job. This is a career. This is something you have to have a passion for, because you're impacting, sometimes you're dealing with people who, this is everything they have. They poured their life into this house. And they don't have, $1 million to spend on repairs or just whatever, and you really, what you do has to be long lasting. It has to be something that you can stand behind. And, you have to care about that on the job. So having my 3 boys working for me now is just a huge blessing. Yeah.
And how old are they?
Well, they're all in their 20s now. But they've been doing this since, they were on school breaks, they were on jobs with me,
Whether they like it or not, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. And I'll tell you, when you're like, 12 through 15, the last thing you want to be doing is carrying block or any of that stuff on your school break. You want to be playing video games and locked in your room somewhere. But as they got older and they realized, wow, okay, we got to go rebuild the foundation. We've done this a million times now, no problem. Let's just go do it. It's now second nature to them. So, I still, it's funny because I still had them get little part-time jobs and things on the side because you have to have a contrast also, and like I said, you have to want to do this. It has to be a choice. So I'm very thankful that they all made the choice and they tolerate me. Yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that too, because I can't remember. Derek, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like someone else we had on a guest too had family coming to work for him, but they were talking about how they like basically made their son or daughter like, you got to go work somewhere else first. You know, like to your point, right? It's like you got to have
Yeah.
a contrast of like what it's
Yep.
like to work for someone else, and then bring those skills back. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Even if it's just, interpersonal skills or something, or being able to contrast the difference between working with my dad and working with, the general public or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they all chose to come back, and, they stuck with me. So that's great. And they all have a stake in the business. So they care about how the job,
Right.
unfolds and what happens at the end. It's not just, they're checking out at 4 o'clock and that's the end of it for them. They've got sweat in the game.
And how do you handle like the division of labor with everybody?
Everybody's got to do a little bit of everything, there's really no one person. There's stages in the project, right? And so if one person's working on one thing, the next person should be setting up for that next stage so it can kind of be a fluid process, and I think that's also one of those things that takes time to develop when you're dealing with employees rather than, family who are ingrained in the company. These guys all know that. And so if they see one person doing something, they're just moving on to the next. And we get through the process very well that way. Yeah. And certainly it wasn't always that way. That's years of doing the same type of thing and seeing all different experiences. And yeah.
Huh.
Paul, I gotta ask. We're talking about your kids and obviously them being in their 20s. What did that look like when they were in high school and growing up? Obviously, you said they worked with you, in breaks and whenever they could. But how did the education piece factor into that? Did they go to any sort of BOCES program or any 2-year program to learn how to do this, or did they learn on the job?
Yeah, that's a great question. They learned on the job, at that time. And I don't even know now. My daughter's in high school now, and I don't know that there's any real programs that will teach you masonry like that, other than maybe like in the union. And that's a whole nother ball game too, because even within the union, I think you learn some general stuff, but you have to work through different phases of the job. Like you might be the guy who mixes all the material, and you might be great at that, but you'll do that for the next 2 years before you move on to setting a block or something. So my kids all learned on the job with me and just actually doing it and learning specifically the foundation component of it and how these skills apply to your foundation and how to really apply that, which is something else that even if masonry, it doesn't necessarily roll over into that the foundation end of it.
Very, very cool. How did you learn the trade? Same
Pretty
thing
much
by doing?
Yeah, same way. I mean, I was very involved in the trades since I was younger also. I mean, we have friends and family. Everybody I know was a business owner. So, to that regard, I had the opportunity to try a lot of different things before I decided really what my passion was and what I wanted to do. I've done electrical, I've done plumbing, and if I had to do that every day, I'd probably jump off a bridge or something. It's just not for me. And just because you could do it doesn't mean that that's the right fit. And so I've tried to, through the years, expose them to a little bit of everything to see what really was the best fit for them. And so thankfully for me, it happened to be this as well. But yeah, on the job, and it's just, there's a lot of times where, and in the beginning, when you're starting a business, it's tough. You start off working a full-time job and then working, starting your business part-time, in congruence with that. And that's a really tough place to be in. So, a lot of it too for me was that I would look at some of these other business owners and what they're doing, what I thought was really good, stuff that I thought I could do better, with, and I kind of just observed, soaked it all in, and took those lessons and applied them in my own business.
That's
I
awesome.
was thinking about this. I got to know any family businesses are always what's the word? Not dramatic, but always we'll say flavorful, right? So you guys got any on-site
Discovery TV moments?
No. Like hey, you didn't clean your room. Now go mix that mortar. Something like that. Nothing like that. No. I don't. That was one of the other things too. And I've worked with subcontractors and things where, they might be on the job and they're working with somebody and then they're like yelling at them, or there's some kind of like soap opera situation going on. And I have no tolerance for that kind of thing. I don't want to see contractors doing that kind of thing. I don't want anybody associated with me on a job behaving that way. And I certainly wouldn't allow that to go with any of my kids. And they know that. And they just, even amongst themselves, there really isn't any of that type of thing. They all get along well, and each one has something that maybe they're not the strongest at, but the other one is really great at, and so it works out really well. Yeah, we don't have any. I wish there was something more exciting to say about that, because that would be a fun topic. But
right.
I got nothing. Thankfully for my business, I have nothing like that.
No, that's probably good from a business standpoint.
On a side note, Paul, if you need anybody to do electrical work for you, Mike's your guy.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
I don't know about that, man. He might be being funny right there. Are you talking about me getting electrocuted?
Yeah.
That's funny. I can do a little electrical. You know what I can't do? I can't do any masonry. That's one thing.
Really?
I have zero masonry skills. Well, not even if you were to even hardscaping, I'd probably up. Never done a lick of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I see a lot of stuff where homeowners are like, well, I patched this little thing and it's, you can see the finger marks in it and everything. And I'm like, you know what? Good for you for trying. I'll give you credit for that. It's not passable on my end, but I like it. I think you did great trying. Masonry is a funny thing because you can only teach so much of it. You could teach the core concept of it, but the whole application end comes down to variables that you can't teach in a classroom. You have to understand how certain materials respond when there's humidity level changes in humidity levels, temperature differences, material differences, polymer additives. There's an array of stuff that goes into how that material will react. And so on the job, well, you don't have control of those variables. You have to know how to compensate and keep that material workable. And we use a lot of structural mortar and structural concrete and stuff, and it sets up really fast. There's tons of polymers in it. There's things that it's fantastic for, things that it would be very challenging to use. There's a learning curve to that, and you really just have to do it. I mean, I've seen a lot of guys try and use the material, and they end up with buckets filled with hard material before they've done anything with it.
Right.
That's frustrating. And it takes time. And so, that's another one of those. If I had to just grab somebody off the street and be like, all right, come on, mix that up, and this is what you're going to do, don't feel bad. They're likely going to have the same outcome as you. You just got to do it repetitively. And unless this is a field you're in, chances are you probably don't have a reason to be doing it like that repetitively.
My masonry, the extent of it is dumping quickcrete and post holes for fences for farm fields. So
all right, fair enough. Yeah, it's good.
That's where it starts and begins. Right there.
There's a little bit of leeway for that,
Yeah. What do you think? Over the years, what do you think one of the bigger challenges you've had to overcome in your business are?
I think finding a balance actually is a challenge at times. There's always there's these different levels, right? Where like you start off and you have to take everything because you just quit your full-time job now because you couldn't do both, and this was the choice you made. You're in it, you're invested in this, and you're not fully really established at that point. So you're taking jobs that maybe aren't the best jobs for you or whatever. That was challenging, but then you hit these like weird plateaus. You're like, all right, I'm doing okay, and you maybe you're like in this maintenance phase of business, right? And things are going well, but you're not really where you want to be, and so now you're looking to upgrade and move on to bigger things, and that perpetual growth cycle could be challenging. Yeah, for sure. And I think sometimes one of the challenges that I've seen a lot of people struggle with, not so much me. I've always done things kind of, I bought my excavator. I worked my butt off, bought it. That's that. I'm not.
Yep.
I don't want to have a million pieces of equipment that are sitting around not being used, and I'm paying on them. I think that's one of those things that really trips people up in this type of field.
Yeah.
For me, I was able to overcome some of that stuff and just keep things kind of within the scope of where I was.
Yeah.
And maybe that means working a little bit harder to get to that next level. But
So
certainly
you didn't run out and get into a lot of debt and grab machines.
right.
So
Yeah.
you went the other side of it, right? Of really just making sure that you grew as fast as your cash on hand would allow you to grow.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's tough. That's tough to do because and you get into you go through the years, right? And there are things that you might shave off of the things of the services that you offer and stuff like that because it just no longer fits where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't enjoy it as much or something like that. But it's a process, and I think maintaining a level of fluidity within that process and being able to kind of go with things
like still that cold's still hanging on a little bit here.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it drags on for weeks.
Oh, sorry about that.
Paul, how long did it take you to get to that point to say, okay, I can maybe pick and choose a little bit more what I want to do? Obviously, it's a long road. I mean, how long before you were able to do that?
I think like every 5 years or so, every couple of years, I try and reevaluate where I am, where I want to be, and am I still constructed in a way that's going to support where I want to go, and do I need to shave things off? So that process has to be a continual thing. I don't think that. I think that, let's say in the beginning, you're like, all right, I could do this sidewalk. I'm not great at flat work. I don't love it, but I can get this project done. Maybe that's the thing next year that you just don't do, and you focus on something that you're better at. So I think it's good to be cognizant of that from the beginning, so that you don't box yourself into something that maybe because if you have early on, if you screw something up, even though it's maybe a smaller job or something that's not that big of a deal, relative to where you are in business, that could be crippling. So I think finding a balance both between work and your personal life, and finding a balance between the type of projects that you take on and that want to move forward is something that I don't think it ever really goes away. I'm at a point now, this is, like I said, 20 years of being in this field, where I really just, I look more at, number one, we only do foundation related stuff now. So anything outside of that, I'm not anymore going to be a good fit for. But even within the scope of foundation work, if I have a customer who's, for whatever reason, they've been reading the internet and their perspective is somehow vastly different than mine, that's okay. But then maybe we're not a great fit for each other, and that's kind of the lens that I view that through at this point. But beyond that, I mean, usually, sometimes I'll get calls for other things that we don't do, but for the most part, people know that we're, foundation work only. So it's a lot less of that now. I think that answered the question. I might have just rambled, so
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know.
totally.
Okay.
Totally. And with family working in the business, I mean, how do you guys find that balance? Obviously working with family, it can, be a challenge. Do you guys have like a shut off point where you stop talking about work, or how do you make that work?
Yeah, I mean, so that's a good question. It's funny because work is kind of, for us, it's not really work. It's a lot. It's a lifestyle component, and so your lifestyle is this. You separate from the work when you're no longer on the job, but we still talk about it. We'll still, randomly at dinner. Oh, you remember this, or don't forget this, or I just thought of that, or something like that. But it's it's pretty lighthearted. It's not like we're not having like in-depth, safety conferences and like crazy stuff like that, other than within the working day. Or if we have to ramp up for something or send somebody in different directions, whatever. But it's more of a logistical thing and less of like, it just doesn't feel like, oh, all we do is talk about work. I think in terms of finding a balance between what we do within our personal lives together and work, I think becomes a little more challenging in that. So we all do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and so our lives consist of, yeah, oh yeah.
Love it, bro. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's funny because our lives, all four of us do it. So it's our lives consist of we work, then we go home, we have like an hour or two, we get ready and we go to jujitsu for the rest of the night. We get home at like 8, 9 o'clock at night, So we do this 5 days a week. We go to tournaments and do all that kind of stuff. And
Awesome.
I love it. I love that I get to do that with them. I'm not too old and crippled yet to keep doing it. So it's really great to share that with them. And so, I think back to what Derek was saying was that, how do we find that balance? I mean, I don't roll with them when we're at jujitsu, so I'll kind of just, I'll pass them by if if they're on the mat or something, I'll go to someone else. I give them a break from dealing with me, and that's pretty much it, so.
That's why there's no on-site wrestling matches, because you guys just hold on to it till jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, we'll work it out till we hit the mat. Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of your goals, Paul? I know it sounds like you reevaluate, where you're at quite a bit. What are your plans for the future, and where do you see you taking your business?
So right now we're working on building an offsite location and getting that set up and being able to kind of separate some of, because a lot of the stuff, like I keep equipment at my house and that sort of deal. But so we're working on getting that set up, something that might be open to customers and things like that. But beyond that, really we want to just keep doing what we're doing. I really want to be able to grow and just help more people deal with their foundation stuff. So I really, I just want to keep that trajectory going. I don't want to change anything as far as the business construct's concerned or anything like that. Really just growing on the foundation that we have. No pun intended, of course.
It's so nice that you get to work with your kids. I got 2 daughters, and I always, I kind of have these visions of the future of, bringing them in, at some point getting them involved. But I give you a lot of credit for not forcing it. It's impressive.
Yeah, it's it's tough. I mean, of course, at that time, I wanted them to come on board and stuff, but I felt really, if I never wanted them to look back and be like, oh, I just did what my dad did because it was right there. You have to make your own lane a little bit, and so I'm happy that it worked out. It certainly was a nerve-wracking time because in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta, I can't wait for you. And all my kids happen to graduate high school early. So I was really chomping at the bit to get them on board. I'm like, this is what I've been waiting for, but I had to pump the brakes a little. So it's definitely difficult, but it worked out, and I'm grateful for it. Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome. And where are you guys located?
We're at Averill Park.
Okay. So you're not far from me then. I'm over in Brunswick.
Oh yeah, not far at all. No.
So you run everything out of Averill Park. I'll have to keep you in mind, obviously, now that we know each other. But you have a pretty big market. Where are most of your jobs that you take? Are they pretty local, or do you travel?
So we won't really travel too far. I'd say within 50 minutes or so of the Albany area. That's kind of my radius. We've done some stuff a little north, a little south, but it's really depends on what the project is.
Yep. Yeah, if it's a large project, you travel. If it's smaller, you don't.
Yeah, pretty much.
How we work it. So did you have? And I guess we'll continue on. I'll keep asking you some questions here. If Mike jumps back in, that's great. If not, we'll get going here. That way we can get you. Hey, there he is. Speak of the devil.
Holy moly! Sorry about that, guys. Our whole building lost internet for like 5 minutes.
Oh man,
I'm not sure what happened.
Okay.
And we were just on the good stuff. I'm talking about jiu-jitsu, man.
Yeah, I love it. I train at Atlas, and I've trained at a few different places throughout the years, and really the dynamic that Edward Anthony created at Atlas Jiu Jitsu is just phenomenal.
That's awesome.
It's such a close group, and we're a competition team, so we really there's some people that are there that are just for hobby, and that's great. That's great too. But it's really it's a brotherhood. There's really no measuring each other in the locker rooms and that sort of thing. There's nobody putting people down, or I've been a lot of places where it's like new people walk in and you just they're just getting destroyed and they're not being supported. And exactly. It's like, totally. And so that's, I think that's hard too, because it creates a scenario where, you're now promoting that if these people even stick around, as they stick around, they're now doing the same thing. And you have a dynamic that's just, you have a bunch of sharks in the tank and you're just throwing chum at them. And that doesn't help people grow as individuals and grow in your training and that sort of thing. So, I'm very grateful to have found Atlas, and that's my home for sure.
That's awesome.
I love those guys. Yeah.
And you're in the Albany?
Yeah, we go to Albany one. Yep.
Is Daniel Poole still down there with you guys?
He's not at the Albany one that I know of. But we have one in Valatia and then one in north. Now I want to say not Glenville.
South Glens Falls.
There's Glens Falls. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, I got to ask, our director of sales and our sales guy, they both are big into jiu-jitsu. They compete. They go to somewhere in Albany, but does the name Carlos Lopez, Aiden Feliciano ring a bell?
Oh, I love those guys. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I train with them too. Yep.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. I was looking at your shirt because I know they all work for that company. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those guys are great.
Small world.
Yeah.
I always bust their chops. I always say to them, "Hey, what'd you get dropped on your head too hard on the mat last night, or whatever?" But they're great guys.
Adam's a tough dude, man. I'll tell you, we were competing in Toronto, and that's how he screwed up his elbow. He's a tough dude, though. He's a good guy. Yeah, for sure.
That's funny.
Yeah, so is Carlos. Yep.
All right. Well, so let's get back to the masonry stuff here. So, a couple of what we call kind of the fastball questions, but when you look at, the value, I don't know if we asked you or not if you went to college or, where do you see college in line with the trades and businesses like yours?
Yeah, it's great. So, I did go to college. I went to college a little bit later in life. After I'd started my business, I'd been working, and I had actually training. I had a knee injury. I blew out my ACL, and I tried for a long time. I just would wrap it and, the thing would fall out the side. I'd go to Jiu Jitsu anyway, this kind of thing. Yeah, I'm not the brightest when it comes to things like that. I'm like, you know what? If I can wrap it, I think I'm good. If it stays with duct tape, we're okay. So I ended up, I thought I thought I was a smart guy. I was gonna, I was doing okay. I'm gonna go. They're gonna drain fluid out of my knee. It would be no problem. I'll be back on the mats. I'll be working. The guy laughed at me. He said, "No, you're getting an MRI." So he's like, "If you don't get the surgery, you'll have nothing left of your knee." So I do the surgery. 6 months later, I have a pulmonary embolism. Yeah. And so it was wild, and I just that took me down for a while, and I started thinking, well, what if I can't keep working? What am I going to do? And so I started going to school during that time, and I did very well. I went to school. I did memory research. I left with a 3.96 GPA, all kinds of awards. And when I was done, I went back to work doing masonry because this is really what I love. This was my passion. And the school, I think it's functional in terms of learning about yourself. I think the benefit of information and knowledge is to be able to apply it in domains that maybe it wasn't necessarily intended. So even though I went to school for memory research, and foundation repair is certainly a far cry from there. I mean, maybe it'd been better if I went for engineering or something, but I don't love calculus, so it wasn't my deal.
Yeah, who does?
So really, I think no matter what you go to school for, you can find something that's applicable that you learn and apply it in whatever you're trying to do. Whether it be an interpersonal lesson, whether it be something academic. But just from the standpoint of learning masonry, the schools don't have a lot of in-depth trade programs, and I think, other than things like maybe auto mechanics and some like general carpentry stuff, I think schools fall short of what it would take to teach somebody not on the job.
Yeah.
So we really need more programs that support people who want to get into the trades. And I won't say too much about it right now because we're in the rollout phase of it, but we're starting to put together a campaign for supporting the trades and supporting people who are entering the trades. And
nice.
And so there'll be more in the future about that for sure. So
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like a market opportunity.
It could be. It could
once
be.
You get to that point. Yeah, once you get ready to go with that, Paul, we'll have to have you back on so you can talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
What's so I know what time we're getting close on time, but when you're looking at your business, what you've been doing for the last 20 years, if you were going to give someone listening, one piece of advice about being successful in business, specifically in the trades, although I sometimes think that business is business, doesn't matter if it's
totally
IT or if it's masonry or whatever it is. But if you were going to give someone one piece of advice, what would it be? My piece of advice would be don't quit. Just don't quit. There are times where it's scary. There are times where it's great, and there are times for myself even where I remember I had like nothing. I just started. I was like, oh my God, I quit my job. I'm doing this. What am I going to do? My kids were little, and I'm like, I rented this boom lift, and I put everything I have into renting this thing to finish this job. I'm like repointing the side of this house with a flashlight in my mouth at 9 o'clock at night because I'm like, I got to get this done to get my deposit back from the damn boom lift. Those are the things that cripple people, and they're like, this isn't for me. So when you have that thought and you're like, what am I doing? This isn't going to work. I don't know how this is going to happen. Just don't stop. Just keep moving forward. That's it. That's the best advice I can give, is not to let those scary times or the challenging times get in the way. Just keep going through them. You'll get through it, and you will get there. Well, and do you think that, because I think, obviously every business owner runs into that situation, right? And it might not be a flashlight in your mouth and a boom lift at 9 o'clock at night,
Right.
but it's something along those lines where it just makes you
Totally.
say like, this sucks. What am I doing? I'm going to go do something else. Right. And,
Yeah.
like when it's happened to me, because I know earlier in my career, like I definitely jumped around every couple of years. It was like, all right, I'm going to do this now. I'm kind of bored with this. And, it's getting hard and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I know like, Andy, I think Andy Frisella talks about it a little bit on his podcast, if you guys listen to Andy or not, but every business has that same set of problems, right? Every business is going to have that flashlight in the mouth, boom, 9 o'clock at night problem, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
It's just going to be a little different on the right. Do you think that, or
100%? Yeah. And I think how if you skip those steps and you never experience that, and something's just maybe a business is handed to you or whatever, I think that's what fails. Those little hardships really are the piece of your foundation that you're building. And I look back on those times, many times throughout the years where I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And even if it's just a perspective of where I was and where I've come to when I hit another challenging point, you really need that to build the fortitude to keep going and to really be successful. So those lessons are invaluable.
I like that. And I saw what you did there with the foundation.
Yeah. You know what? I'm well primed for that now.
Yeah.
I can't help
it. So Paul, if people want to learn more about Top Course Masonry, where can they find you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Check us out at topcoursemasonry.com. And yeah, certainly if you have any foundation issues or questions about your foundation, always give me a call, send me an email. I'd love to help you.
And do you work for general contractors as well? Do you go in on jobs as sub? I should ask that before.
No, so we're like a direct hire. I really want to work with the homeowner directly, because at the end of the day, the general contractors, and it's not really anything against them, but their idea, they want to make money on a job.
Sure.
That's what it is. And so for me, I don't, I care about fixing that problem. That doesn't, what that looks like doesn't matter to me in terms of a larger project scope. That homeowner doesn't care about the larger project scope. They care about long-term, is this foundation going to hold my house up? Is it going to be waterproof? Are we going to be in good shape moving forward? And so it's like working with a middleman at that point. So we're really a direct hire.
Okay, perfect. All right. I should have asked that earlier, but just made me think of it. I was like, oh, so, and I love to end the show twice. So, it's always a good time.
Okay.
Eric, did we miss anything on there on our question list?
No, I think we hit it all. So, we appreciate you coming on, Paul. Thanks for taking the time, and
thank you.
We'll have you back on in the future to talk about, your new project.
Awesome. Exciting. Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the day. And thanks for listening, everybody, to Blue Collar Startup. Check us out online. You can find us pretty much everywhere where podcasts are. And I think we've got a couple more to get. We got a fun one coming up next week with Dancing Grain, second generation farm owner. And they have a farm brewery now. So I think we're going to have a couple of drinks while we're doing it. So should be
awesome.
Paul, thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right, guys. Have a great day.